All right, picture this in the dead of night. A giant weasel, taller than 3 grown men, is kneeling by my bed begging for help. Just leave. I pushed Huangda outside and slammed the door shut, but everything remained dead silent. Those emerald green eyes. Qingyi stared straight at me without blinking, as still as an ancient statue. Watch closely here. Cold sweat soaked me, while the giant foxes around us fiercely debated my ultimate fate. Our big brother is gravely ill. How could a human cure him? Why don't we just eat him right now while he's fresh? Let's eat him. That was a red, furred fox with a savage face. Chi-Chu called him the second brother, but what if he can cure him? Didn't that Huang family boy say this human actually has real skills? This was another gray fox, far calmer. Both sides argued heatedly, without a single one of them caring about my life. What on earth does that patient know? You're the clueless one. You are an absolute idiot. No, you all know nothing. I screamed internally. Bosses, can you just give me a straight answer already? Are you stewing me or making me into soup? Stop arguing over my final fate. Damn it. Just as my brain was about to short-circuit, Qingyi finally spoke. Her deep, elegant voice carried the absolute authority of an alpha leader. I sat on the edge of the bed, my mind filled with that deceased patient and his family cursing me. Human, look up. I instinctively raised my chin, meeting those emerald eyes as deep as the ocean. That boy, Huang Da, said you cut open his wife's belly and saved his newborn pups. Is it true? I nodded desperately, my throat dry. Qingyi asked slowly, using the methods of humans right. I kept nodding like a broken sewing machine. Qingyi fell into a long, heavy silence. Her massive fox head tilted as if weighing the pros and cons. The air grew heavy, making it hard to breathe. The second brother saw Qingyi hesitating and let out an impatient growl. His drool almost dripped on my shoes. Dude, can you watch your manners? You are an immortal fox after all. Have some class. 9, take him inside. Now I know what you are thinking. Safe at last, right? Well, not quite, as the second brother protested. Mother, do you really trust this human? What if he pulls some tricks during surgery? Qingyi glared coldly at him. Second brother, staying awake all night was absolute torture, but without intervention that mother and her babies would surely die. If your brain were half as active as your mouth, you would already have a human form. He instantly shut up. Offended, he curled up in a corner to play with his tail. I followed Yi-Chu inside the cave. Huang Da quickly followed, whispering, "Miracle Doctor, do not fear. Lady Qingyi and her sons are highly reasonable. Their logic probably means if I heal him, I am a miracle doctor. If not, I am the appetizer." Stepping into the cave, the sight shocked me. It was not dark at all. The stone walls were covered in glowing moss, illuminating everything like daylight. A strange scent floated in the air, a wild beast aroma mixed with expensive incense. As we moved forward, the metallic smell of blood and decay grew stronger. Inside the widest stone chamber, I finally met their eldest brother, Bai Chen. He was an incredibly massive white fox lying weakly on a stone. His silky fur was stained with dark red blood. The worst part was one of his front paws grotesquely bent and twisted in a highly unnatural way. Now, pay attention. This is where things change, because I couldn't help myself and opened the door again. The wound was deep and wide open, and what was even stranger, wisps of black smoke drifted from it. Evil energy. Seeing this, my professional instincts completely overrode my fear. I frowned deeply. GQ stepped closer and gently touched the tip of Bai Chen's nose. Bai Chen struggled to open his golden eyes, letting out a weak sigh. He could not make a single sound. I stepped forward to examine the injury, but the second brother blocked me. "What are you trying to do? Trust me, what happens in this operation will leave us breathless. Let's find out together if he survives," while Chi-Chu roars desperately at second brother. Second brother reluctantly stepped back, glaring at me like some imposter who might kill him at any second. I put on the last sterile gloves from my kit and carefully parted the tangled fur from the wound. Suddenly, a freezing dark aura surged through my fingers straight to my brain, making me shiver with intense cold. Huang Da was still there curled on the floor, and when he saw me, his round eyes shone like light bulbs. Embedded deep within the wound was a palm-sized black scale, its jagged edges sharp enough to slice through bone. The surrounding muscle tissue was completely dead and blackened, giving off a thick, foul, dark smoke. What on earth did this to him? My voice trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the absolute shock of this bizarre injury. Chi-Chu's eyes turned blood red. It was He Yan, that ruthless eagle. He used that cursed scale to ambush him. Now I get it, this was no ordinary cut. The dark energy radiating from the scale made this wound highly complex, causing a severe, rapidly spreading infection. It stopped the healing process completely, eating away at his life force like a highly corrosive, burning acid. Watch closely right now, the situation was extremely critical, and the dark toxin had already spread completely. If we wait another half hour, he will lose his leg and die. Instantly, the cave went dead silent. Dozens of glowing fox eyes locked onto me all at once. "Quick, bring your wife to the yard. My little cabin in the woods is a typical northern-style house." Jingyi silently loomed behind me, casting a massive shadow. "How confident are you?" she asked. "Clean the wound, cut away the dead tissue, and purify that dark energy." Combining modern medical logic to treat the infection with spiritual purification would give us a fighting chance to save him. But my patient was anything but normal. Even worse, the dreaded shaking in my hands had returned in full force. I clenched my fists to steady my voice. I must operate, extract the scale, and scrape the dead flesh. The risk is extremely high, and I have no anesthesia for his size. He will have to endure the pain. I also need clean boiling water, blood-stopping herbs, and the sharpest blade. "I will give you whatever you need," she replied. "But if you fail—" Qingyi stared at me, her intense gaze cutting right through to my very soul. She did not finish, but I knew the foxes outside were already lining up to devour me. I smiled bitterly. Besides, if I fail, I do not expect to leave here alive anyway. I looked at Bai Chen, who was watching me. It smelled of disinfectant mixed with old wood. I spread a sterile sheet on the table, creating a makeshift clinic. In those beautiful golden eyes, there was absolutely no fear of death. That same hopeful look was once given to me by a 25-year-old patient who died on my operating table in the past, a life I could not save. I know what you are thinking, but I forced myself to snap out of it. "Stop shaking Lu Echuan. You are here to save lives. Get everything ready. We are going to perform surgery right now." The Fox Pack's efficiency was incredible. Chi-Chu quickly boiled crystal-clear spring water in a massive stone pot. Several small, nimble foxes carried a bunch of sharp stone fragments in their mouths. They were unbelievably sharp and made of a very rare material. Their edges gleamed with a light as cold as my scalpel. I dropped the stones and tweezers into the boiling water to sterilize them. Speaking firmly, I looked at Chichu. Gather everyone and hold him down with everything you have. Do not let him move under any circumstances. A single mistake, and we will lose him forever. When Huang Da rushed inside carrying his wife, I saw that the poor female's belly was dangerously swollen. Chichu nodded firmly, pressing his heavy weight onto Bai Chen's hip, alongside several other large foxes. This will hurt terribly, so try to bear it. Bai Chen closed his eyes, seemingly understanding. As I picked up the hot stone and brushed his skin, my traitorous hands began shaking once again. Voices from my past crashed over me like a wave. Fraud, give me back my son. You do not deserve that white coat. My vision blurred, and the fox's blood seemed to morph into that uncontrollable pool on my old operating table. Miracle Doctor, wake up! Huang Da's anxious voice echoed in my ears. He had grabbed a strange plant glowing with a faint blue light and shoved it right under my nose. A refreshing scent rushed into my lungs like ice waters, instantly clearing the horrible nightmares from my mind. Breaking out of my trance, I met Bai Chen's calm golden eyes once again. He said nothing, but he trusted me. My grandmother always said I was born for this. She had no strength left to even make a sound, shivering violently from the intense labor pain. Steady mind, steady hands. And trust me, it is time to believe in myself. Come with me to watch this moment of absolute raw tension. I closed my eyes, buried the fear, and everything became crystal clear. My hands finally stopped shaking. I made the cut a firm, clean, and decisive strike. Opening the wound, I saw the rotting, fibrous tissue. Bai Chen roared with suppressed agony as his entire body convulsed violently. He Chu and the others pinned him down with all their strength, digging their sharp claws deep into the dirt. Dark, purplish blood mixed with thick black smoke erupted instantly. I did not hesitate for even a single second, focusing with a level of intensity I had never felt before. Sweat soaked my forehead, dripping down my nose. Huang Da deftly used a dry cloth to wipe my brow. Suddenly, my stone fragment hit something hard and strange. Found it. Using 2 stone shards as makeshift tweezers, I carefully slid them into the open wound until I firmly gripped the edge of that dark, menacing scale. The scale seemed alive, vibrating deep inside Bai Chen's flesh. "Hold him down. Keep him still," I screamed. Outside, spooky tree shadows danced against the window, and though I was terrified, my professional instincts forced me to focus. Watch closely, because this is where everything changes. I pulled with all my might and ripped that massive scale from his body. A thick, sticky black smoke poured out uncontrollably, slowly fading away under the soft glow of the luminous moss. I dared not stop now. I used the boiled herbal water to flush the wound, then scraped away the rotten flesh with a sharp stone until bright red blood finally flowed. Only at that very moment did I feel like I could finally breathe again. "Quick, bring me water!" I yelled. Bai Chen's breathing was dangerously faint, a clear sign of shock from blood loss and immense pain. Now came the absolute most critical step, the stitches. This wound was massive. Ointment alone would not do, but I lacked needles or thread tough enough for fox skin. Cold sweat drenched my trembling hands. Just then, Qing Yi, looking down at one of her tails, began to glow with a brilliant, shimmering silver light. Suddenly, an incredibly fine strand of silver hair detached itself and drifted gently through the air. "My name is Luke Xuan. I used to be a chief surgeon, but back then I was so terrified I just wanted to hide and cry." I grabbed my hidden surgical kit and carefully began sterilizing the thick fur on her round belly. transforming into a sewing needle with a glowing silver thread. Use this, Jingyi whispered weakly. It is my very life strand. It can heal anything and preserve life. I was completely stunned. How much spiritual power did this take to make? You and I both know the power of a mother's love. This fox risked her very life for her son. Without a moment of hesitation, I took the silver needle, which felt as warm as precious jade. This was the most miraculous surgical procedure of my entire career. The needle glided smoothly through Bai Chen's flesh. The silver thread wove through the wound like a melody of healing. I stitched slowly with absolute extreme precision. Every single stitch was tight. As I tied the final knot, I collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. It felt like my soul was completely drained. But the operation was a total success. I looked at Bai Chen sleeping peacefully on the stone slab. His breathing was steady, and his pale nose was turning pink again. He lived. The silence in the cave was absolute. Hundreds of foxes stared, unable to believe what they just witnessed. I called my old roommate from the obstetrics department, who answered half asleep, and I rushed to explain the emergency. Instantly, Chi Yu stepped forward, lowering her majestic head to gently nuzzle my cheek with pure tenderness. Her fur was incredibly soft, smelling of fresh and comforting woodland scents. Next, the second brother approached me, the very one who wanted to eat me earlier, bowing his head silently, apologizing for his past hostility. A second later, every fox in the entire cave bowed down to me in perfect unison, a silent wave of gratitude that weighed a ton. Sitting on the cold floor, I stared at my bloody hands and the glowing needle. Suddenly, I laughed, and then cried without stopping. The tears kept falling. I saved him. Lu Xuan, you are still a doctor. You can still save people, no, save lives. I stayed in that cave for 3 days. I spent those 3 days more comfortable than when I was chief physician back in the city. When thirsty, I drank sweet liquor they brought. It tasted strong. When hungry, they offered me mouth-watering roasted meat and juicy wild berries whose names I did not even know. Thanks to his remote guidance, my confidence returned. Listen to me very closely. I have to operate on your wife. I slept on a thick layer of dry grass covered with an incredibly soft, warm animal pelt. Resting there was absolute heaven, pure and comforting. I thought to myself, this was not suffering at all. It was the animal kingdom version of a Hilton presidential suite. Bai Chen's healing rate was unreal. By the morning of the 3rd day, he was already slowly moving his injured leg. His snow-white fur completely regained its brilliant, radiant luster. And that's where we leave it, seeing how that thin silver scar is the only reminder of how close we came to losing him. Look at him, walking over his golden eyes, no longer holding the pain we saw before. Only warm gratitude remained. Thank you, human miracle doctor, Bai Chen said, his voice clear like a mountain spring. I was looking down, packing my medical kit, and answered him without even looking up. No need to be polite. It is just a doctor's duty. As I said it even, I froze. Life and death are completely in the hands of fate now. I took a deep breath and grabbed the scalpel. After quitting and returning to my hometown, I thought I would never utter those words again for the rest of my life. Yet it slipped out so naturally. Plus they actually treated me with respect now, without staring like they wanted to eat me. We are a branch of the Qingqiu mountain fox clan called the Chiksu. We have protected this forest for hundreds of years, and that black eagle, Heian, is our sworn enemy, who constantly tries to seize these lands. Hearing this, I was stunned, feeling like I had crossed a major boundary. and somehow wound up as a live audience member for bizarre ancient Chinese folklore. Before I left, Qingyi called out to me, handing over a long fire-red leaf, glowing like an eternal flame. This is the crimson flame herb. It does not just cure 100 poisons, it also wards off evil spirits. I was about to reject it, but Qingyi locked his emerald eyes onto me. Take it, Liu Xuan. Your spiritual aura is pure. In these wild mountains, it is far too easy to attract dark entities you really should avoid. Under the dim light, my hands began to tremble again. It felt like I was back in that tragic operating room. Wait, did you catch that? A pure spiritual aura? I had no clue my body possessed such a mystical constitution. Before I could demand answers, Jingyi had already vanished back into the cave, leaving a fresh scent of agarwood behind. Chi-Chu offered to walk me home. The giant red fox, standing over 2 meters tall, padded right beside me. His presence was incredibly overwhelming. Every forest animal went out of its way to avoid us. Reaching the old acacia tree at the village edge, Chi-Chu stopped. If you ever need me, just stand before this tree and call my name 3 times. I will hear you. I nodded. Looking at his massive, fluffy head, I could not help but reach out to pet him. It felt absolutely amazing. Chi-Chu wagged his tail, happily paused to think, and added, My oldest brother is Bai Chen. My second brother is Chi-Er, and you can call my mom Qing-Yi. My lips twitched. Their naming system is way too literal. You and I know he completely missed the joke, just licking his lips and flashing his sharp teeth in a big grin. I know what you're thinking, but as I cut her skin, strange black smoke drifted out, bringing a bone-chilling cold. By the time I reached my small forest cabin, dawn was breaking. Grandmother had just opened the door to grab tools from the shed. Imagine her shock. She froze right on the spot upon seeing us. What a spectacular welcome, she noted. Grandmother squinted her eyes without a trace of shock in her voice. I, on the other hand, nearly fainted. Oh my God, my once tidy courtyard had been completely transformed into a wild mountain marketplace. Stacked by the wall were 3 plump pheasants and a wild boar leg weighing dozens of pounds. There were found also 2 bundles of carefully prepared rare medicinal herbs. Right by the mill lay a basket of juicy wild fruits. You could smell their sweet fragrance from afar. Some unknown bird even fluttered on the windowsill beside a string of shiny, colorful stones. Your friends are incredibly generous. Grandmother pointed to the courtyard wall and laughed. I looked over. Unreal. Chi-Chu's massive head was poking right over the bricks, blinking those huge emerald eyes, looking exactly like a giant plushie they just could not hide properly. There was 0 time to process this. I focused entirely on stopping the heavy bleeding right away. I rushed over, desperately, trying to push his massive head down with one hand, while calling out to explain to Grandmother he is a distant friend from the mountains and this is rent. As I shoved him, Chi-Chu let out a soft whine and quickly shrank his neck back. Dropping her sickle, Grandmother walked to the pile, grabbed an apple, wiped it off, and took a big bite. Not bad. Your friend has manners. This fruit is delicious. I watched Chi-Chu walk away, looking back at every step before vanishing into the woods. The heavy knot in my chest finally loosened. Grandmother walked over and gently plucked a strand of red fox fur from my shoulder. Now that you are back, stay. These mountain folk might have lots of rules, but they are far easier to handle than city people. All my past trauma seemed to vanish in an instant. Su-in, You have cleared your mind over these past few days, right? And in the end, looking into her wise eyes, we both know my decision is finally made. Forcing my hands to stay steady, I moved fast, and within minutes, several tiny wet creatures slid into the tray. I do not need a big city operating room to save lives. As long as I can hold a scalpel and heal someone even in this small cabin, I am still a doctor. Come along with me and watch her life turn around. Every day, I dried herbs in the yard with Grandma and visited the village for supplies, though my garden kept getting livelier by the day. Today, a basket piled high with dewy red fruits suddenly appeared right outside my front door. Tomorrow, there would definitely be premium ginseng sitting on the windowsill. No need to ask, these were gifts from my furry mountain friends. That sweet boy Huang Da even used to bring his wife over to visit me. Their 3 little dumpling babies were already rolling around everywhere, clinging to my legs and absolutely melting my heart. My old roommate from the OBGYN ward called again to ask if I would come back, complaining that the new intern's hands shook way too much during sutures. I am going completely crazy. I listened to her whining over the phone as I stepped outside, watching the garden creatures and the misty mountains off in the distance. Huang Da's wife finally gasped in massive relief, letting out a soft, weak squeak. I just smiled and told her I was never going back. She asked if I seriously planned on cultivating immortality out in the countryside. I have new patients here. New patients. But your little country clinic does not even have an electrocardiogram machine. I gave a mysterious smile and said they were not what she thought. Hanging up, I took a deep breath, enjoying the incredibly pure air. Now, pay attention here, because right at that moment, I suddenly heard a soft scratching sound at my door. A tiny, soaking wet otter held its injured paw, looking up at me with total sadness. In a tiny squeak heavy with a cold, dark energy, it told me that a mean crab had pinched its little paw. I looked closely and noticed a faint trace of black smoke swirling all around the small wound. Come in. Let me clean that wound and wipe out that dark energy from your body. My little countryside clinic was officially open for business again. Life continued with this magical rhythm. Day after day, my patient list kept growing. 3 tiny lives welcomed the first rays of the morning sun. The mother and her beautiful babies were completely safe. We treated a clumsy badger with a broken leg that Chichu had literally knocked out to drag over here, and a baby wild boar foaming at the mouth from eating the wrong wild mushrooms, chased by his angry mother right to my door, nearly knocking down my brick wall in the process. We even had a depressed nightingale singing tragic love songs right outside my window. So loudly it gave me a headache while I was trying to vent about my old medical career struggles. You will not believe this, but a few days later he got cured and actually tried to set me up with a pretty girlfriend. He kept chirping for us to hurry up. I thanked him, but politely passed on the offer. Are you sure you do not want to? Thanks to word of mouth, my medical reputation became legendary throughout the mountain. Not just among Chichu and Huang Da, my fame reached all the way to the neighboring hills. Then one night, an incredibly violent shaking woke me right up. Thinking it was an earthquake, I rushed out to the yard to check. Oh my God! A giant black bear the size of a truck had its paws up on my wall, peeking its head inside. I stared straight into his big, shiny, round eyes, my voice shaking uncontrollably. Huang Da wept tears of pure joy, quickly rushing over to lick and clean his exhausted wife and kids. Right next to him was a monkey scratching himself anxiously. The moment he saw me, he screeched, pointing directly at the bear's open mouth. Enduring some massive mental pressure, I slowly took a step forward. When he opened his snout, the odor hit me so hard I almost fainted. Come on, this is not just any bear, it is Haiyan. His teeth were completely rotten right down to the roots. There were even human candy wrappers stuck between his giant fangs. Just how many sweets did you steal from kids? Heian let out a pathetic whimper, trying to shrink his massive body. You need an extraction, and not just one, I warned seriously. The giant beast started trembling with absolute terror on his face. I sighed, having no choice but to call Chichu for help. I shouted toward the old tree, and a red shadow instantly leaped down. Were you looking for me, human? I explained Heian's painful situation, and Chichu burst out laughing. That big guy is such a glutton, he totally deserved this. With pure excitement, he leaped away and brought back the medical tools. 2 giant pliers made of polished stone. I stared at them closely, and they were literally bigger than my own thigh. I pulled off my blood-stained gloves and stared at my hands. They had finally stopped shaking. I thought about it for a second and chose the simplest, most brutal method. I told Chichu and some other strong foxes to hold Heian down. I tied one end of a tough vine around the rotten tooth and secured the other end tightly to Chichu's huge, fluffy tail. On my signal, you run forward. Listen carefully now. 1, 2, 3, go. Suddenly, a terrifying, blood-curdling scream echoed. A giant, bloody tooth went flying, and Heian rolled on the ground in absolute agony. The sheer force of the pull actually made Chichu stumble. I picked up the tooth and finally breathed a sigh of relief. And that is how we leave things tonight, with Heian's whimpering and the fox's laughter echoing deep in the forest. After pulling out all his rotten teeth and channeling my spiritual energy into his gums, Heian collapsed completely onto the floor. Come along for this absolutely wild ride. Remember, no more stealing sweets. Heian nodded weakly with tears in his eyes, and from that day on he became my bodyguard. Every single day, right on time, he brought me a jar of the freshest, most delicious honey around. It felt like a massive weight had finally been lifted as I watched the beautiful sunrise from the porch. He also kept an eye on the mischievous monkeys so they would not ruin my precious vegetable garden. My life was more peaceful than a retiree's until an unexpected visitor suddenly showed up. That day, I was applying ointment to a wounded rabbit when someone suddenly kicked my courtyard door wide open. A middle-aged man wearing a black Taoist robe was standing there slowly adjusting his glasses over his nose. His cold eyes stared at me like a snake eyeing its prey, saying, "You must be Lu Chuan," as I frowned. "Who are you?" He did not answer, but instead scanned me up and down with a deeply unsettling smile. Just as I thought this body possesses spiritual energy. My informant caught Bai Yan's scent in the mountains. It seems you were the one who cured him. He had not even stepped inside yet. A heavy wave of sinister energy washed over me as he muttered that his identity did not matter. What matters is that a doctor like you has such skills, and I have a major job requiring your help. I called my friend immediately to say everyone was fine, and that I could finally hold a scalpel again. You must come with me. But what if I refuse? I had every right to say no. Cold sweat was already drenching my hands as the guy let out an icy laugh without moving an inch. Watch closely, because that black talisman in his hand started moving on its own signaling I had no choice. As he spoke, all the medicinal herbs drying in my shop turned pitch black at an unbelievable speed, instantly crumbling into ash and sending shivers down my spine. This level of power was far beyond my comprehension, so I demanded to know what he did. "Just cleaning up some trash," he said, staring greedily as two thugs in black suits materialized behind him. They were obviously mobsters forcing me to step back out of pure survival instinct. My heart hammered so hard it felt ready to burst, but just as they lunged, a golden flash shot out from the corner. He sank his sharp teeth directly into the wrist of one thug. It was Huang Da. He snarled, with his fur standing on end, but the guy waved his hand, blasting Huang Da away with dark energy. "Are you really planning to stay in that middle-of-nowhere corner forever?" I stared at the dried blood under my fingernails. He coughed up a mouthful of blood, and my eyes instantly flared with pure rage. "It seems your friends cannot save you," he sneered. But at that exact moment, the ground trembled as a massive pressure filled the air. Heian's massive body completely blocked the main entrance as a deep, rumbling growl escaped his throat. You can literally see his gentle eyes turn to pure fury as dozens of dark shadows surround the courtyard. Chai-Chu Chi-Er and an entire pack of sharp-eyed foxes glared at him, their razor-sharp claws gleaming. Up in the sky, hundreds of birds circled overhead, led by that very same bird from before. Its sharp cry carried a clear warning, and even the newly recovered little salamander crawled out of its water tub. Baring its tiny teeth, it glared at the intruder, leaving the Taoist and his men completely frozen in shock. His once steady hand began to shake as he stared at the massive 2-meter-tall bear towering right behind me. His face turned pale as he backed away, and I felt the peaceful vibe of my home change completely. I stayed silent. "Hey, Lu Ashuan, in our profession as doctors, saving lives is always our ultimate duty." A heavy aura of death filled the air, but I felt no fear at all as I stared at him and calmly said I was going nowhere. "And it looks like my friends do not want you here either," making the suited bodyguard swallow hard in worry. He stared at the hundreds of glowing green and red eyes surrounding them as his legs trembled out of control. "Dr. Lu, can we just talk this over calmly?" I smiled because this sudden feeling of power felt absolutely incredible. "Oh, so now you want to talk?" I looked at all the loyal animals standing protectively around me. Feeling incredibly safe, I locked eyes with the man in the black robe and decided not to say another word. I will never forget the twisted look that man gave me right before he finally turned to leave my home. He adjusted his glasses and flashed a sinister smile that sent a shiver down my spine, telling me to get ready. "Sooner or later, you will come find me on your own," he threatened before disappearing into the deep woods with his 2 beaten thugs. As I watched them leave, a deep dread settled in my chest, and knowing this was only the beginning. But sometimes fate is impossible to stop. And ever since that tragedy, I have lived under a heavy cloud. "So, do you think Grandma got scared?" Not a chance. She just walked over and patted my shoulder. "Do not pay any attention to that lunatic. He has a terrible reputation around here and calls himself Taoist Master Qingshu. He is up to no good. Trust me, you and I are about to see how wild this gets." After that storm, my tiny courtyard suddenly became incredibly popular. And right when we thought peace had finally returned after sending off that big shot, it turned out things were just starting. The very next morning, Huang Da's wife returned. But this time she was not here to express her gratitude. She cradled something round in her arms, wiping away tears with a face full of absolute distress. "Divine Doctor, please save my neighbor. He is hurt." I looked down and froze. It was a curled-up hedgehog. Its entire body was covered in sharp quills, but this time it was tangled in plastic bags and broken glass. Did it go roll around in a trash dump? We deal with life and death daily in this line of work. You cannot expect 0 deaths. Everyone has their fate. Huang Da's wife sobbed, explaining that it got curious, crawled into a tourist's chip bag, and got trapped inside. As it rolled on the ground, all that trash pierced its skin. Now its wounds are already getting infected. I let out a resigned sigh and grabbed my medical kit. With my experience from Bayan's surgery, treating this was a piece of cake. An absolute breeze, though I still shivered occasionally whenever I recalled that intense gaze from Taoist Master Qing Shui. But once I channeled my spiritual energy, my mind finally began to calm down. Now pay attention here, because after saving this hedgehog, our reputation in the forest absolutely exploded. My home became a clinic for supernatural creatures. Today, I had to treat a limping black bear. He brought a massive mountain ginseng to pay for his cast. Tomorrow, a heartbroken, depressed owl is visiting. He kept slamming his head against a tree, so his partner brought him in. The next day was even stranger. A snake spirit with hundreds of years of cultivation got too greedy and swallowed an entire pig whole. I know. So do you plan on coming back? I watched the first light on the horizon and kept quiet. Turns out that pig had a stomach full of stones, leaving the choking snake with its eyes rolled back. Every single morning when I opened my eyes, a massive line was already waiting right outside my door. Beasts that flew, ran, or burrowed through the earth. The sheer variety of patients was absolute madness. It felt like an animal documentary, and I know what you are thinking, but my grandmother got completely used to it. She even built sheds in the yard to serve as waiting rooms. Chuan, my boy, you really gave your career a second wind. You used to save humans in the big city, and now you are in the countryside rescuing immortal beasts. My grandmother said this as she fed millet to a magpie with a broken wing, sighing with emotion. My face twitched as I grumbled silently to myself. A top-tier hospital's star surgeon was now giving enemas to snake spirits. This career shift made me want to get a veterinary license. Just when we thought we had this chaos under control, guess who decided to show up Bai Yan and Qi Jue? I was just asking out of curiosity. To be honest, I want to quit this stupid job myself. But this time, they were not in their beast forms. When the courtyard door opened, I froze completely solid. The man in front wore a white robe, his hair tied up casually at the back of his neck. His face was more striking than any movie star's, especially with those captivating golden eyes. They were cold, but overflowed with charisma. It was Bai Yan. Behind him stood a massive guy dressed in fiery red. With large round eyes and bulging muscles, he looked like the type who could slay a bull with one punch. That was Qi Jui. I stood there dumbfounded, holding the hose I was using for the snake spirit's enema. You transformed Qi Jui burst out laughing, asking if talking like this was not much easier. This way we look more human. Bai Yan greeted me politely, every single gesture proving he was no mere mortal. Divine Dr. Liu. Are you well? I tossed the hose aside and wiped my sweat, telling him to just call me Liu Xuan. So, which great immortal is visiting today? Did they overeat or try to smash their head against a tree again? Sir, I am a surgeon, not an obstetrician. You have the wrong person. This yellow weasel was named Huang Da. I am flooded with work daily. I do not know what bad luck hit me today, so many pregnant women are waiting. His expression grew solemn. The noisy courtyard instantly fell silent as the terrified little animals refused to make a sound. That is not it, Liu Xuan. The mountain god has vanished. Qi Jui stepped closer, his voice echoing deep like thunder. He has not just disappeared. The mountain's spiritual line is on the verge of breaking. He pointed behind him, and I followed his gaze. The mountain that was once vibrant and green was now shrouded in a highly disturbing, thick gray mist. That aura matched Master Ching Shu's. Stick around with me to find out what happens next. All right, you and I are diving into a world where the mountain god's disappearance let death run completely wild. Countless creatures are going mad because the mystical ley line is drying up. If that line collapses, every living being on this mountain and the whole town will be devoured by this darkness. My heart stopped as I recalled Ching Shu's demonic smile. That guy in the black robe was definitely behind this. Hanging up the phone, I glanced at the sun shining high in the sky and walked back inside the house. I asked, and Bai Yun nodded. That villain has been coveting the god's immense power for way too long. Qi Jui gave me a worried look. They searched everywhere, but only my spiritual energy can purify this thick darkness. Divine Doctor. We have to rescue the mountain god and save the very heart of this land. I fell silent. I was terrified. In the end, I am just a surgeon with a scalpel, and now I have to save all of nature. This is going from simple surgery to an extreme geological rescue. I only wanted a quiet life in the village, healing and feeding cute, fluffy animals every single day. But as I turned my head and looked out into my courtyard, I saw the little animals staring at me with complete trust, the healed magpie, the limping black bear, and Huang Da's 3 children hugging my legs. If that mystical line collapsed, they would all die. I remembered how after my tragic medical accident, these sweet creatures gave me back the courage to heal. Huang Da and his family were still resting peacefully in the cozy makeshift nest I built for them. Their love saved my heart, and now you and I are about to see if I can save theirs. All right, do not look at me like that. I sighed in resignation and went inside to pack. I rushed inside and quickly prepped my medical bag, packing the special alcohol infused with my spiritual energy. It was a powerful, curse-breaking potion I had been brewing lately. I took out the spiritual fur Bai Yan gave me, and the silver needle to pin it near my neck, tucking the healing herb into my clothes. I felt an instant warmth protecting my heart. To hell with that self-proclaimed Taoist master. My scalpel can save lives, but it will also cause him plenty of pain. I slung the bag over my shoulder. I walked out and saw Bai Yan and Qi Jue waiting. I took a deep breath and told them it was time. With newfound firmness in my voice, I ordered the mountain god's rescue. Bai Yan stared at me. A flash of gratitude shined in his golden eyes. You deciding to come is already our greatest hope. I gathered dry grass from the yard, sprinkled some disinfectant, and let this family of 5 stay here temporarily. I just hope that God is not heavy because my skinny body cannot carry him. Someone let out a laugh. Qi Ju lifted his massive rake from the ground, smiling. That is what I am here for. The sunset stretched our shadows. You and I both know how precious family is. My grandmother waved goodbye, telling me to be back early for dinner. She said she would make ribs soup. I said my goodbyes and followed the 2 figures, one red and one white. We headed toward the deep mountain shrouded in mist. The path to the abandoned temple was worse than I imagined. It was a wild trail through the ancient forest with weeds taller than a person. There was nowhere to step. Carrying my bag, I used a branch to feel my way with every step. I feared stepping on something dangerous. As we ventured deeper into the woods, everything grew darker. The sky threatened rain, and The wind blew with a damp chill that seeped straight to my bones. I could not help shivering. The strangely shaped trees swayed their branches in a rather sinister way. 2 days later, at dawn, my grandmother was screaming outside. Trust me, you won't believe what she saw next. They looked like a horde of demons reaching out in the dark, and honestly, the truth was not far off. Along the way, I saw dead rabbits and pheasants all wrapped in a subtle, gloomy, dark mist. Their flesh was completely rotten and blackened from the corrosive death energy. My heart sank instantly. The pollution was worse than we thought. After nearly 2 hours, we spotted a ruined temple. It was the abandoned mountain temple with almost all its walls collapsed. The windows were rotten, and the god's statue was covered in thick cobwebs. Its clay head lay tilted on the ground, half buried by the overgrown weeds. Those empty eyes looked terrifying under my flashlight. It was a very disturbing scene. Not a single insect could be heard. That tense silence accompanied me as I walked inside. I went around the broken statue and at the base of the back wall found a rusty iron door. A dead pheasant with a snapped neck lay right by our door as she called out, "Shihuan, come look at this." It was hidden behind weeds and rubble. I pushed it, and a screech echoed through the temple. What do you think we will find in there? Let's step into this horrifying place together, where a damp, rotten stench instantly makes me want to gag. Behind the door hid a pitch-black secret passageway so tight that only one person could barely squeeze inside. I told Bai Yan and Chi Jue I was heading down to investigate while they covered me from above. Chi Ju scratched his head in worry, offering to go first because of the danger, but I gestured him back. With your massive size, if you get stuck in that narrow tunnel, I will waste all my energy pulling you out. That would be a huge mess. Stay sharp, and if anything feels off, get back up to the surface immediately. The stone steps were damp and slick, coated in dark green moss that felt like stepping on slippery soap. Inside the cavern lay a massive pool surrounded by sharp stalactites that constantly dripped water from the ceiling. The water in the pit was pitch black, bubbling with a dark, filthy foam that released a putrid stench. Let's find out where this mysterious pheasant came from while a tiny head suddenly peeks out from behind the grinding stone. Chilling death energy floated up from the pool, completely suffocating the entire cavern. A heavy weight pressed on my chest, making it hard to breathe, right where an ancient, withered tree stood. Its trunk was covered in blood-red talismans that fluttered eerily in the freezing, unnatural wind. 4 massive iron chains hung from that dead tree, keeping a mysterious figure tightly bound. His long white hair flowed down to his ankles, his limbs pierced by chains and pinned straight to the trunk. With his head lowered, I could not see his face, but he definitely did not look like an evil spirit. Instead, watch closely here, he looked like a pure deity, trapped in some agonizing, tragic nightmare. The heavy scraping of iron chains was followed by a low, heart-wrenching groan of agony. My heart clenched. Certain this was the endangered deity Bayan mentioned, I cautiously took a step closer. I wanted to examine his wounds, but as if sensing my presence, he slowly lifted his head. Huang Da stared up at me with those huge round eyes. His eyes held an ocean of gentleness, even though they were bloodshot from the intense torture. Suddenly, my foot hit something hard. Looking down, I spotted a wooden tablet buried in the mud. I picked it up, wiping away the dirt to shine my flashlight on 2 carved characters. Qing Shu, my eyes widened and my heart stopped. It belonged to that wretched Taoist priest. That despicable priest was plotting a massive conspiracy just as I had suspected back in the courtyard. The look he gave me was pure malice. As I stared at the tablet, a creepy laugh echoed behind me, mocking his failure to lure the 2 foxes. He didn't expect a simple doctor to walk into his trap, and trust me, you'd freeze up too at this moment. I nearly dropped my flashlight as a figure in black Taoist robes slowly emerged from the shadows. It was the same man from my grandmother's house posing as a wholly immortal Taoist Master Ching Shu. His tail was even wagging. My grandma smiled and joked that it was probably delivered to the wrong house. But his mask of holiness was gone, revealing a face twisted with absolute greed under my flashlight. His sinister laugh gave me goosebumps. "It is you," I gasped, clutching my medical bag tightly. My heart sank. "What did you do to the mountain god?" "What did I do?" Ching Shui asked, narrowing his eyes. He stared at the chained deity in the center of the pool, his eyes burning with fanatic worship. "I am merely helping him let go, since the spiritual energy of every creature belongs to this mountain range. He has monopolized it for too many years. It is finally my turn to claim it. This is shameless theft wrapped in pretty words, you fraud. You brat, what do you know?" He laughed like it was a joke, shouting in a high voice that he had cultivated Tao for 200 years. I reached my limit without breaking through. So why was he born a deity, to hoard all power and live forever? He pointed in pure rage at the chained figure trapped in the pool, leaving gifts and running off. "If nobody claims it, we cook it. This bird is incredibly plump and juicy." Shaking with raw greed and fury, he declared that if heaven was unfair, he would seize the power himself. I sacrificed 100 years of my own cultivation to build this soul-devouring array, drawing underworld energy to rot his body and crush his life force once he is gone. I will be immortal. From now on, this entire mountain will obey me. Hearing this, a cold sweat broke out on my back. This old man was completely insane, and rotten to the core was Brother Bayan's injury your doing too? That fox, he sneered. He fell for the Eagle King's spiritual trap. And trust me, our journey gets even wilder. Let us dive right into this, because this guy surviving must mean he has 9 lives. I totally wrote him off as dead. He never expected a mere mortal to actually heal him. He stared at me like he just discovered a priceless treasure. He even licked his dry, cracked lips. How curious. What if I take you back and slice you open to see what is inside? Maybe that would speed up my grand plans by a few years. The moment he finished speaking, he just waved his hand. He was so desperate, he kept bowing, pleading, that the villagers believed I was an incredibly skilled doctor. Every morning, I would open the door to find a fresh pheasant, and sometimes even a giant field mouse. Several blasts of a strange dark mist burst from his sleeves, instantly reshaping themselves in midair into razor-sharp arrows. They flew straight toward my heart. I was so terrified my soul nearly left my body. My only thought was, help me. This time I am seriously going to end up looking like a pincushion. In absolute panic, I blindly grabbed the fur around my neck, the protective talisman made from Bai Yan's vital fur. I desperately focused my thoughts. The amulet seemed to read my mind. A silver light flashed from it, transforming back into a long, slender needle. "Save me!" I screamed, throwing the silver needle with my eyes shut. Suddenly, a brilliant flash of light erupted. The needle rapidly expanded in mid-air, forming a translucent silver shield that stood firmly in front of me. The dark arrows slammed into the shield, causing an ear-piercing metallic screech. Finally, they dissolved into a cloud of black smoke. Master Ching Shu's face instantly twisted in dark anger. He snorted with contempt. "Just a cheap trinket from that old fox? Let us see how many times it can save you. After eating pheasant 3 days straight, even my burps started smelling like wet chicken feathers. Now, watch closely here because my fear suddenly vanishes as my professional medical instincts take absolute control of my body. I locked my eyes on the massive magic seal behind him staring at the pool and the withered tree spewing endless black smoke. I closely examined the heavy iron chains that were radiating that thick dark mist. Even though magic seals were completely foreign to me, the chaotic energy felt just like a poorly stitched wound. That was the weak spot. I gripped the scalpel from my medical kit. My heart was pounding like crazy, but my hands remained absolutely steady. It is just some raw energy. And you seriously think you can stop me? Ching Shu laughed coldly, instantly, unleashing a crushing, suffocating spiritual pressure. Bei Yan's silver shield let out a sharp, agonizing creak. It is going to shatter, I realized in absolute panic. This will not hold. What do? I did not have the luxury to just sit around and wait for death. My eyes scanned the dark cave before finally locking onto the center of the pool, right at that ancient, withered tree. I knew nothing about magic or spiritual seals, but as a trained doctor, I couldn't take it anymore. I stopped Huang Da and begged him to stop bringing birds because I was totally sick of them. I immediately recognized the primary source of the trauma. That dead tree was the absolute core of the damage. If I could surgically cut out this tumor, it might change everything. I know you probably think I am totally insane. I pulled the scalpel from my kit alongside Bai Yan's needle. The second my shield shattered, I refused to back down. Ducking low, I dashed straight forward. Ching Shu never expected an unarmed mortal to dare to attack him head-on like this. He froze in shock for a second, and that brief distraction was enough to reach the edge of the pool. I leaped onto the dead tree, the freezing cold from the exposed roots instantly piercing right through the soles of my feet. Shaking violently from the chill, the death energy rising from the pool swarmed around me like flies attracted to fresh blood. I genuinely felt like the blood flowing inside my veins was about to freeze completely solid. Thankfully, the Qi Yan herb tucked in my robes flared with heat, dispelling the frost and restoring strength to my numb limbs. I did not dare pause. Ignoring my freezing limbs, I scrambled up the trunk toward the figure chained by their collarbones. Huangde tilted his head, seemingly understanding my words perfectly. Up close, I realized the things piercing his body were definitely not normal iron chains. They were carved with writhing, dark runes, pulsing, almost like some sort of living parasite. They were constantly draining the golden divine energy from his body, siphoning it through the tree and deep into the earth. This was the source of the hemorrhage. How dare you, Ching Shu's furious roar echoed behind me as he finally reacted. Several blasts of shadow energy transformed into sharp blades, hurtling straight at my back. There was no time to dodge. I could only grit my teeth and slam my scalpel directly into the joint where the chain met the tree trunk. I channeled every bit of spiritual energy into the tip of that blade, but those dark swords had already pierced deep into my shoulders and back. The pain was so blindingly intense that my vision went completely dark. With a metallic taste of blood in my mouth, I held on. Suddenly, I felt thrown back to that traumatizing surgery from my past life. The beeping of the hospital monitors rings in my head. Back then, I failed, but today, you and I will watch me change my fate. The next day, the meaty smell was gone, replaced by a pile of bright red wild berries covered in fresh morning dew. Letting out a desperate scream, I ripped the silver needle from my neck. Listen closely. because we're about to see how I used this as a conduit, needle feeding it right into the chain. A sharp crack echoed through the cavern. The exact moment that iron chain snapped, a brilliant golden light exploded. It flooded the gloomy cave with light. Swirling torrents of dark energy hissed and vanished the second they touched that golden glow. My path to immortality," King Shu shrieked in absolute agony. Half of his body, caught in the golden light, hissed with black smoke. He knew he was finished. Gritting his teeth, he abandoned his quest for immortality. Meanwhile, my entire body turned into a desperate, fast blur. He dived into a hidden passage and vanished. Finally, the danger was over, and the crushing tension inside me completely snapped. Incredible exhaustion hit me all at once. My legs gave out, my grip slipped from the log, and I plummeted into the void. But the freezing water and jagged rocks I expected never came. Instead, I fell right into a warm, firm embrace. Xuan is that the great immortal Huang Yi saw him. It seems these creatures are literally paying us rent. Now watch closely here. As my heavy eyelids fluttered open, I saw a breathtakingly beautiful face, his eyes glowing with a soft, divine light. It was the mountain god I had just saved. He held me close as warm energy flowed from him, quickly healing my internal wounds. "Thank you, my little divine doctor." He smiled, his voice sounding incredibly soft and melodious. "I am the god of this mountain. My name is—" I smirked, wanting to act cool and tell him to send a thank you trophy, but my eyes were just too heavy. Everything faded to pitch black and I completely passed out. When I finally opened my eyes again, I was lying in my own familiar wooden bed. The warm afternoon sun was drifting through the cracks in the window, heating up my legs. My grandmother was sitting right there, wiping my face with a damp towel. "Are you awake?" she asked as I blinked. She let out a massive sigh of relief. "You foolish boy, you have no fear. You were asleep for 3 days and 3 nights. I tried to sit up, but my entire body ached and I had absolutely zero strength. Do not move," she commanded. I have to admit, these little animals are incredibly spiritual. How could they not be? Stay still. My grandma gently pushed my shoulders. The young man who arrived with Chiju said you have spiritual exhaustion. You need to rest. The guy with Chiju. My sluggish brain still could not process what she was saying. Ah, the one wearing that long white robe. He is incredibly handsome and carries himself so well. He looks like a gentle scholar and knows so much about medicine. My grandmother gave me a knowing look. It is Bai Yan, the white fox you saved. Even though he is still injured, he brought rare herbs and wild mushrooms. He says you saved his whole clan. He insisted I give you everything. But I secretly knew Bai Yan did not just bring me medicinal herbs. He was probably terrified I would die, leaving no one to treat the mountain animals. I just stared at the ceiling beams. You and I both know that feeling. When a dream feels too real, right? The cave felt like a nightmare. But my back pain proved it happened. Lu Chuan, a luckless guy who almost lost his medical license, actually chased off a rogue Taoist priest and saved a literal god. Not only do they pay rent, but they basically understand human speech. Over the next few days, he proved his high intelligence. If I wrote this down in my annual report, the hospital director would definitely throw me into psychiatric evaluation. Oh, by the way, my grandmother suddenly remembered something else. She leaned in with a mysterious look. Days ago, that abandoned temple on the back mountain glowed with an incredible golden light. Everyone in the village is saying that the mountain god has finally returned. Now the temple incense offerings are exploding in popularity. We even have crowds of people bowing respectfully at our doorstep. I just smiled, gave her a vague answer, and left it at that. I spent a whole week drinking endless bowls of bitter medicine. During that time, my little backyard practically turned into a charity center. Huangda visited every single day. He always brought a jar of wild honey, claiming it would replenish my energy and blood. Ju brought me a pile of glowing, colorful stones, insisting they would make my physical appearance look much better. He told me to slip them under my pillow. I stared at those aesthetic rocks that would only break my neck. He left early and returned late daily, bringing wild mushrooms and bizarre nameless medicinal herbs as gifts. Fox aesthetics are clearly on another level. But the absolute funniest part was the spirit snake whose indigestion I once cured. He shyly handed me a nearly translucent snake skin. Dr. Liu. This is the skin I just shed. You can make an undershirt out of it. It blocks swords and spears, plus it keeps you incredibly cool. I just stared at that cold, slimy skin. My mouth twitched. I knew that not once in my entire life would I ever want to wear something so bizarre. So, that is where we leave this wild journey, accepting these bizarre gifts with a smile, as my busy yard came alive daily. Let's dive into this beautiful place packed with mystical herbs, little foxes and weasels running all over the yard. I was relaxing in the sun, holding the warm Chiyan grass when suddenly an unexpected call came from my past. It was my loud obstetrician friend from the hospital screaming with excitement that I was suddenly super famous. They officially cleared my name in that case, and his loud screaming almost blew my eardrums right out. Thanks to my medical care, his wife recovered quickly and was soon waddling around with their tiny pups. Squinting my eyes, I lazily replied that I was way too busy hanging out with my little forest spirits. Now pay attention here, his voice was literally shaking as he revealed my old medical accident was finally cleared up. That patient's family was absolute trash, and they were only trying to pull off a massive insurance fraud. They gave the patient an illegal foreign drug right before the surgery, and the autopsy proved everything. He died of cardiac arrest from a bad drug interaction completely unrelated to my surgical work. All the online trolls completely changed their tune, and now the hospital website is flooded with apologies. My old chief of department keeps asking when I will return, even promising a massive sign-on bonus. You and I both know how painful this was. But the truth is finally out. I am not a murderer. I never killed anyone. And that heavy, suffocating nightmare on my soul is finally gone for good. I let out a huge sigh of relief while watching my crazy yard where Chiku was arm wrestling wild boars. Please save my wife and children. I will work tirelessly to pay you back. Finally, one evening, Huang Da brought his whole family to say goodbye before returning to the mountain forest. He won and cheered wildly while my newly healed magpie sang completely out of tune in the old tree. No chemical bleach smell existed out here, just the clean, pure fragrance of Mother Nature. In that moment, I realized the cold offices and that endless hospital stench were permanently left behind. All those toxic, endless power struggles felt so distant that I texted back a simple answer: I am never coming back. I have found something far more precious in this place, leaving my phone completely silent after that. He finally accepted it, texting back a thumbs up. I put my phone away and stretched, knowing my new journey is just beginning. I felt completely refreshed until a soft, desperate panting suddenly broke the peaceful quiet near my front gate. I looked up and couldn't help but laugh out loud at the most incredibly round, adorable little panda. He was rubbing his tummy whining and pointed his tiry eyes toward a bloated stomach shaped like a giant soccer ball. Clearly, this little guy totally overate. I brushed off my hands and happily grabbed the stethoscope sitting beside me. After sending off these very unusual patients, my quiet life finally returned to normal. The rescued forest deity suddenly dissolved into a gentle breeze. Swirling across the yard, it brought a refreshing gust. Smiling, I told the panda I would massage his belly, and trust me, he is in good hands. Next patient. But pay attention here that peace didn't last. On a dark, starless night, a familiar knock echoed at the door again. Thinking Huang Da was back with more strange gifts, I reluctantly dragged myself to open it. I yelled that he didn't need to pay rent anymore, but before I could finish, I froze. It wasn't Huang Da. Standing there was a massive wall of crimson fur, a giant beast over 2 meters tall, glowing under the moon. Its emerald green eyes shone like lanterns in the dark. I shivered, completely paralyzed with fear. Its massive shadow swallowed me. That overwhelming heavy aura almost forced me straight to my knees. I couldn't move a single muscle, while my brain screamed for help against this terrifying man-eating monster. But then the massive beast spoke first, asking if I was the miracle doctor who saved the Huang family. Seeing him on the verge of tears, the deepest trauma in my heart suddenly woke up. I trembled, unable to speak. It knew our language. Then the monster slowly lowered its giant head. Following its gaze to the ground, I saw its massive claw pinning down a tiny, shivering creature. Look closely. It was Huang Da. Seeing him actually helped me gather a tiny bit of my courage. I asked what it wanted. It didn't answer, but instead opened its bloody jaws bearing terrifying fangs. My heart nearly stopped. I was dead meat. It was going to eat me. But before I could even scream, I was suddenly lifted high into the air. It tossed me onto its back like a helpless little chick, easily snatching up Huang Da, too. Buried in thick crimson fur and completely dazed, I heard the beast growl to hold on tight. Instantly, that crimson monster bolted like lightning into the deep forest, while a freezing wind whipped painfully across my face. My limbs went numb. I could only cling desperately to its red fur. 2 weeks ago, when a 25-year-old died on my operating table, his family begged me just like this. Since then, seeing a scalpel makes my hands shake uncontrollably. Clinging to its back, I shakily asked Huang Da what was happening, but he was just as terrified. He whimpered that Chichu invaded his home, forcing him to lead the beast to me for an emergency. Chichu, so that was this red fox's name. On our way, we dashed past a ruined temple. No one had visited that sanctuary in centuries. Under the pale moon, a headless god sat on the altar. Its clay head had fallen to the ground long ago, resting quietly on its side. Those empty stone eyes seemed to watch our grim path, sending a deep shiver down my spine. I gripped Chichu's massive back tightly, while my body bounced with every leap, and the icy wind sliced through my clothes. It felt like my bones would shatter from the extreme speed. After a long run, the beast finally slowed. The air around us no longer smelled of rotting leaves or dry twigs. Instead, a fresh fragrance drifted by like fine agarwood mixed with wild herbs. I turned my head away, stared out the window, and told him I was no longer a practicing doctor. Stick with me for the next part to see what those glowing eyes and dark whispers really mean. All right, you and I are jumping into a nightmare as monsters ask why Chi-Chu brought a delicious, pale human. Isn't he crazy? Bringing a human into sacred lands. My heart stopped. Did he really drag me straight into a fox demon's nest? I am totally doomed. Liu Xuan, you didn't come to save a life today. You came as a home delivery meal. Kikyo ignored the whispers and dragged me further ahead until we finally stopped in front of a massive cave. He crouched down so I could dismount, speaking deeply into the cave. I brought someone who can save our big brother. Several foxes of different colors slowly emerged. The one leading them was even larger than Chi Tu, radiating a majestic, commanding aura. But what almost made my eyes pop out was, behind her, 3 long fluffy tails swayed gently. The pressure was so heavy that my legs kept shaking uncontrollably. She was Qingyi, Chikyo's mother and clan leader. Surrounded by giant beasts, my deep phobia of massive things instantly woke up.